Alright everyone, so this is the second video. We're talking about chapters 4, 5, and also chapter 6, 4, 5, and 6. Let's go one by one. Chapter 4. Now what do you need to focus on? Well, chapter 4 is a lot about, those polygon operations you've been using a lot in the labs, using Maya. What do I want you to focus on? Well, basically this, extruding. Not so much about, what is the shortcut to extrude. No. I want you to understand how you can use it in modeling. What kind of objects, what kind of looks can you get by using extruding? So if I gave you an object, you should pretty much know that, oh, okay, that can be achieved by way of extruding the polygonal model until you get that object. For instance, I'm not gonna say what, but figure out things just by looking. You should be able to know how extruding can be useful. The second one is beveling. I know not many of you use this, but please do understand what beveling is. Don't go confused. Whenever I ask what bevels are, how you can use it, why is it needed. So focus on this as well. It's used a lot to make round edges on an object so that it doesn't look very CG. So focus on beveling as well. Finally, welding. Some of you may accidentally use this, or perhaps you might have personally asked me how to do certain stuff, and you might have come across this tool which is called welding. Now with welding, I want you to focus on what welding is, what are the safe techniques perhaps, and understand what welding is lah, basically. So don't go confused whenever I ask welding. So that's pretty much it for chapter 4. Moving on to chapter 5. Well, chapter 5 is a lot about the best practices when it comes to modeling. And what I need you to focus on is basically this slide here. What is offline rendering and how is that different from real-time rendering? What offline is and how it's different compared to real-time rendering. Just really read through these slides, and you can read more in our textbook if you don't understand what this is. Also, how do you count polygons? We don't do a lot of counting when we're doing Maya, except for if you were to open the heads-up display and look at the polygon count. But do go through this text here and understand how do you count polygons. If this was a cube with 6 faces, what is the total number of the polygon? So it's actually, the triangles is what you count. So it should be 12 triangles in a cube, or this one, and so on. Okay. What else? In best practices, I want you to also focus on why do we actually keep everything in quads. Alright. So quads is basically 4-point polygons. Focus on this, and why do we keep it 4-point polygons? Why do we keep it quads most of the time when we're doing modeling? So focus on that as well. Moving on to chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a really long lecture. What do you need to focus on? So don't worry, I'll basically pinpoint you to what you need to focus on. And the first thing you need to focus on is basically, when we're doing shading and texturing, it's not just a matter of giving it a color. There's also other mapping techniques. There's color maps. There's also all of this here. I don't want you to, it's not a memory recalling exam, so I want you to really understand. If I ask you what color maps are, what specular maps are, transparency maps are, you should be able to know what each one of these is. So pay close attention to all these mapping techniques and how it can be used. For instance, transparency mapping. how can you use it? You can use it to create a stained glass effect. You can use it to create eyelashes, or maybe rows of grass, for instance, and you know, focus on that. All right. What else? See, I think I saw it earlier. It's actually this one, the Fresnel effect. Understand what is the Fresnel effect. How do you where can you observe the Fresnel effect happening in real life? What is it? Like for instance, you know, if I were to give you a picture of this, you should be able to explain that. The Fresnel effect is the observation that the amount of light you see reflected depends on where you're looking at, the angle where your eye is. From this angle, I can see straight down to the bottom of the surface, but at a glancing angle like this, I can see lots of reflection, and it's hard to see right down to the bottom of the surface, for instance. Right, so be able to articulate what the Fresnel effect is if given an example picture like this. Alright? Alright, what else? I also want you to pay close attention to this one here. So we have like 3 ways to kind of change the look of a surface. The first one is displacement maps, then we have bump maps, and we also have normal maps. They're quite different in their own respect, but for instance, normal maps is kind of similar to bump maps, but they're different as well, and you can read more about the difference here. Alright, and the application is different as well. For normal maps, they use a lot in perhaps video games, yeah. So focus on that as well. And whereas you know, bump maps, they differ from displacement maps as well. For instance, displacement map actually changes the shape of your geometry and produces different shadows when light is projected on it. Bump map is a cheat, it's a trick. And here's a list of, you know, all the limitations of bump maps and how it's different from displacement maps. This is a displacement map applied to this sphere, whereas this one, we do see all the surface changes, but it doesn't really actually change the shape of it. So do focus on this one, these 3 stuff basically: displacement maps, bump maps, and also normal maps. Yeah, so read through that, you should be fine, and being able to compare from one to the next is what you need to do. And lastly, in this chapter, what I need you to focus on is actually this part here. For instance, if I say diffuse, what is diffuse? What is glossy? What is specular? Pretty straightforward, really. Diffuse is, it gives the color of the object. Glossy is some lights gets reflected, but it's a soft reflection, so you don't get the right reflection like specular, for instance. So focus on these 3 things, yeah. And perhaps, you know, understand what shaders are as well. Yeah, shaders, and you know, things like, you know, you've seen shaders a lot. A lot of times you'll be using Arnold and you're gonna use the shaders from Arnold, but we also have things like Phong, Bling, Lambert, and those are your classic shaders. And whenever I you know, put down those terms, you should know exactly what those are: Bling, Phong, and Lambert, for instance. Those are basically our legacy shaders. And that's pretty much it for chapter 6. So please focus on those. See you in the next video.